Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Birdie and I'm a ceramic artist from Sweden. So today's video is kind of the start of a new series I want to begin, and it is to make planters for all of the plants in my studio. And the problem I'm running into right now is that my plants are all in these plastic pots, which doesn't look very nice at all. The plant pots that I do currently have in the studio that are big enough are all store-bought ones, and the ones that I made myself are all the B-grade ones I couldn't sell because of just glaze flaws, and all of those ones are too small. So this starts the beginning of a new project to make planters for all my plants. Now, my idea is that I'm going to be making planters of little animals that are from the same region that these plants are from. So I did a little bit of research to figure out what philodendrons are from, and they are from Central and South America, which is really, really exciting because since it's such a tropical area, it gives us a lot of different types of animals to work with. So I did make a list of animals that are from the area, and I looked at everything from frogs and quetzals and like scarlet macaws. I kind of wanted to do something that was colorful, but after just thinking about it for a little while, I thought it'd be nice just to start off with a bang and make a jaguar planter for my White Princess. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a challenging project because I have to throw planters that are bigger for these new plants I have, and also I haven't made a jaguar before. I think the most challenging thing for me is going to be painting these spots for the jaguar. If you've ever looked at jaguar spots, they are very unique from leopard spots and from cheetahs. And I have a lot of experience painting stripes for tigers, but for jaguars, that's something totally new for me. The first thing I need to do though is figure out how big of a planter I need to make for this plant pot. As you can see, it has a really big plank, and the other thing I need to consider is just making sure I make a ceramic pot that is hefty enough to withstand the weight of this plank. Now, it isn't to say like this plant is actually going to topple over or anything. It's actually quite sturdy, but it would be really nice just to give it a little bit more support so I don't have to worry about someone accidentally knocking it over. So to figure out the size of the planter I need to throw, I need to take some measurements. The thing is, when working with clay, is that clay shrinks actually when you're working with it. So I actually have done some measurements and my clay shrinks about 10%, and I need to make sure that there is also just some clearance in case of just like any minor warping and such like that. So if we're looking at 14 centimeters for the final size and we want it to be about 10% bigger, I need to throw a planter that is at least 15.4 centimeters wide in diameter. To make sure everything fits though, when I'm throwing, I'm gonna aim to make a plant pot that is 16 centimeters wide. I also need to make sure that I measure the height, and the height is about 10.5 centimeters. So I think what I'm gonna aim for then is a height of 12 centimeters, which will also be really good just to hide like the top of the planter itself. I keep saying planter, but I mean the plastic pot. So that's my goal then. I'm gonna try to throw a piece that is 12 centimeters high and 16 centimeters wide. The other thing is I want the shape of the planter to also have a little bit of shaping. That's gonna be like the animal. So I need to make sure that I get enough clay also to account for those extra curves in the sculpture. So how do I figure out how much clay I'm gonna need? Math was not my strong suit in school, and there's just something about numbers that my brain can't process. Despite the stereotype of Asians being good at math, I was not one of those Asians, and I struggled a lot through calculus. Right now I'm trying to figure out exactly how much clay I'm going to need, but you know what? I think I'm gonna just take more clay than necessary because I can always just cut the clay piece down if it's too large. It's always better to start big and then go a little bit smaller. So first things first, let's go throw the clay for this planter base.
I looked at some pieces I made in the past and saw that I used 2 kilos of clay to make something that was about the same size as I was planning for. This clay is actually some recycled clay that I had left over, so I decided to use that. And then I made sure to wedge it really, really thoroughly because since it had been sitting around for a little while, I could see that the consistency wasn't completely the same all the way through, which can cause some problems when you're throwing. So I took some time to really, really wedge it thoroughly, and I'm not sure if you can see, but the color of the clay became a little bit darker after I finished wedging it. I then prepared this huge bucket of water because my clay actually needs a lot of water to be thrown with because it's very sticky, and then I got all of my tools together. Now looking back, I'm not really sure what I was doing here. So the problem I was having is that the larger bats I have don't have bat pins in them, so I tried to make a clay platform, I guess to say, to put the bat on and attach it. I had seen this on YouTube. I didn't really know what I was doing, and honestly, it didn't work. So I ended up just pulling off all of that clay and ended up using my bat mate instead, which is what I usually do. Bats are the round wooden disc that I'm throwing on. And the reason that potters use this is so that they can take a piece off of the throwing wheel more easily without it warping. And you're actually going to see exactly what I mean by this later on and why it's a lot easier to use a bat than to throw directly onto the wheel. So I began to center, and it started taking me a really long time to center actually. I realized that the reason it was taking me so long to center this piece was because my bat was actually shifting around. There was something going on here. I'm not really sure why this was happening, but you can see that the bat just wasn't staying centered, which made it impossible for me to actually get the clay to center itself. So I tried again with that technique from before. It didn't work again. I just struggled a lot. So I did a desperate thing and I just pulled the clay off of the bat and put it directly onto the wheel head. Now, I realize now that this was a moment of desperation because I'm going to super regret this later on, and you're gonna see exactly why. But at the moment, I was really happy because I could finally center my clay and actually get to throwing. And I was able to throw the exact shape and size that I wanted on my very first attempt, which was really exciting, and I was really happy at that moment because it just felt like all the time and experience I had with this clay was finally paying off. And looking at it, it was perfect the very first time around. But that happiness very quickly faded when I realized I had to take it off of the wheel.
So you can see the piece that I just threw, and I had some problems with centering and the bat was moving and stuff like that. So I had to transfer it to be directly onto the plate. The problem though is that it's been a long time since I've thrown without bats, and that means I have to get this piece off of the wheel without it warping. The thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take like a quick lunch break, let it sit here for a little bit to dry some more before I transfer it off. Fingers crossed everything works out. So I just had my lunch break and I'm gonna be taking this pot off of here now, and it turned out a lot more like squat and fat than I had originally planned, but maybe that'll be super cute. Anyway, there is a trick to take off pieces from the wheel without it warping as much, and it's using a piece of paper to basically put on the top of it and try to keep a more vacuum seal of air inside, which helps it, keep its shape. So we're gonna try that. This could be the moment it all gets ruined. Oh my God, how am I gonna get this off? This is why I wanted to use a bat. Oh my God. It's like pulling off a Band-Aid. It's like pulling off a Band-Aid. Oh my God. No, I just totally ruined it. Ah! Nope, it's ruined. I totally warped it. I wonder if I can fix the inside of it now. I really messed it up. It's so lopsided now. Oh man. Am I just making it worse? Oh my God. I don't know if you can see how much it warped, but I'm not happy with this. I think we're gonna try throwing this one more time and somehow figure out how to get the bat to stay in place. Okay, so the piece totally warped when I took it off of the wheel, which is annoying, but that means that I'm gonna just try to throw a new piece. And actually, honestly, it gives me another chance to do things right the first time and also aim for the original shape that I was going for. Right now it's a bit like squat and round, and I wanted it to be a little bit taller on the side for the head. So we're gonna give it another go. So I think the reason why the bat wasn't staying in place, even with the mat, was because my mat's actually a little bit too big for my wheel head. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a new batmate thing. This is just like a chamois type thing. I think you can just buy them on Amazon. And I'm gonna cut it into a slightly smaller circle, and hopefully that will give me enough suction that the bat will stay in place, and we can give this another go. Okay, I have now cut out my new little batmate thing that is going to be the size of my bats, and hopefully this is gonna work. So, on to round two. Okay, round 2 was way easier than the first one. I don't know why I didn't do this the first time, but as you can see, we have another very rounded squat boy. Or really lady, because she's gonna be a princess. I'm gonna take it off now, and it should be pretty easy to take off because, yeah. Oh my God, a million times easier to take off. So this is just a learning lesson to use a bat mate that's the correct size for your bats. And yeah, you'll save yourself a ton of time. This is a comparison of number 1 and number 2. This one definitely ended up more squat, which I need to check the size and height of it, but you can see how much better this one is. So we're gonna ruin this one and recycle it. Boop. Here is the attempt number 2 for the jaguar planter, and it turned out so like squat and round. But I think that's just because of the measurements I had, right? It had to be 16 centimeters wide and 12 centimeters tall for the height. So yeah, we just ended up with a really nice squat little jaguar. So the next thing that needs to happen is I need to wait for this to dry for a few days. We're gonna put this little guy into a corner to dry overnight, and then tomorrow, hopefully it will be dry enough for me to do some trimming and then some sculpting. All right, so now we're at the next day, and the biggest thing with pottery, or the most important thing you need to manage with pottery, is the moisture level of the clay. If the clay gets too dry, you can't work with it anymore, and if it's too wet, you can't really touch it. You can see here though that I can touch it quite a lot without it warping, but I can tell that the bottom of it is still pretty wet. However, at this stage, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wire it off of the bat, otherwise it's gonna be too hard to take off later, and now we wait again. So I guess I'll be back when this is dry enough to actually handle. So it's been about 48 hours now, and I've come back to the studio to check the wetness of the planter, and it is actually perfect today for me to work with. So I'm gonna be trimming it into size and then sculpting all the little details today. So I finished trimming the bottom of the jaguar planter, and it's time to finally sculpt it. Now, it's kind of funny when I lift this up because it is so heavy compared to my usual pieces, and I did intentionally make it like that. I wanted it to be heavy so it wouldn't topple over, because it is going to have a plant in here along with a really large plank. So I needed it to be really, really stable, but it still surprises me when I lift it up and just hold it because it is so heavy. The other thing that's also quite funny about this is because it's just so much more squat than I originally had drawn it out to be. I mean, I threw it to the dimensions that I wanted it, and of course it's going to end up shorter than taller because of, you know, math, but we're gonna have a very chonky little jaguar. Anyway, let's go ahead and get sculpting. Okay, so I have the face sculpted, and now I want to add some legs, like back legs to this. And I really hope it doesn't end up looking weird. Let's try this. So what I would like to do is, I don't want to add too much clay to the sides or the profile. Otherwise, the cat is gonna have legs that stick out a lot. But we do need to add a little bit of something here. But the important thing is having the foot here. And I think that's gonna look pretty cute. That doesn't look great right now. All right, I'm gonna have to flip this over. I regret putting on the ears so early. Usually I don't add the ears until the end, but I thought it'd be fine. However, it's definitely not fine this time. So I just spent some time trying to put on that back leg, and honestly, I just don't like the way it looks. I'm looking at it now and it doesn't really add that much to the design, and it just looks kind of weird. So I think that I'm going to pull it off because I think right now sculpting the back legs just isn't worth it. And if I imagine this as a real animal, if it was like a really fat cat, its back legs would just be hidden under all the fat anyway. So we're just gonna chop off the leg and pretend this whole part of the video just didn't exist. You live and you learn. Okay, well, I tried to put the back legs on, didn't work out. And I guess we're just gonna call it finished for now. And I didn't imagine the sculpting for this would be that difficult, and honestly it wasn't. The thing that's going to be the hardest about this project actually is painting the spots for the jaguar, which I'm at the moment not really looking forward to. But now I basically just have to wait for it to dry before I do any painting, and that's going to take a few days. So I'm going to go ahead then and wrap this up and let it slow dry so that nothing cracks, and then when it's dry we'll get to painting. After a lot of waiting, the jaguar is finally dry enough to be painted. And honestly, I've actually been putting this off. Oh, sorry, you can't even see it. Honestly, I've been putting this off a lot because I'm actually very nervous about painting this jaguar. I mentioned before that I thought that the most challenging part of this project was going to be painting the spots for the jaguar, and I still think that's going to be the hardest thing. And it's been more than a month since I've even touched this project. This jaguar has been fully dry and just sitting on the shelf, waiting to be finished for a really, really long time. And I have just been too nervous to do it. I'm gonna put this down because I don't wanna keep holding it and I'm really afraid of dropping it. But the painting process is actually really, really challenging for me for most of my projects. I feel like when it comes to painting and glazing, those are the steps that can either make or break a piece. And so for the very first thing I have to do for this jaguar is I need to paint a base yellow color all over it. And then I need to paint the black spots on top of it. I don't have any experience with painting jaguar spots. I painted a lot of tiger stripes in the past, but jaguar spots are their own kind of thing. And I really want to make sure that they are jaguar spots, not leopard spots, not cheetah spots. I want them to be very, very accurate to what they actually look like. And so actually what I did is I have actually brought some painting materials to practice painting jaguar spots before I actually get to the final piece. I am really worried that when I start painting the jaguar spots that they're gonna look really bad, but I can't keep putting this off. I really, really need to paint this little princess lady and put her into the kiln to finally be finished. So I've just started painting the spots and then I realized something else that I didn't think about. The color of a jaguar is a color that I do not actually have. If you look at the color here, like, I don't know if you can see this, it's kind of like a warm orange yellow color, and I don't have that. I have these reference palettes and you can see that I have tested them on different kinds of clay. Sorry, this is really blurry, but you can see that here are the colors that I do have. And these ones don't match the color of a jaguar's orange, yellow orange. So I have two options here. I can either try to mix a new yellow orange that will match the color, or I buy a color and have to test it and then hope that it's the right color. I don't really want to buy another color specifically for this project, and I kind of just want to mix a new one. So maybe I won't be able to actually finish this project this week like I thought, because I'm not really sure if I'm confident enough to mix a color and get it right the first time. The thing is, when you're working with glazes and just underglazes like this, the color that they end up being when they're finally finished and fired doesn't always end up being the way that you think it is. So I would definitely be taking a risk here if I were to mix a new color for it. However, a part of me kind of wants to do that, and then we'll just see how it turns out. I think we're gonna do that. I really want to finish this project, so I think what I'm gonna do is I'm going to try my best to mix a yellow-orange color that's going to work for this. So fingers crossed, I got this, hopefully. So this is my plan. I have used this orange before on this tiger, and my idea is that if I take this orange and then mix in a little bit of yellow, it's going to make the color that I want. The problem is that it's like how much yellow and how much orange I put together to make it the color that I need. And honestly, there's no way of knowing unless I test it, and I'm not testing it. So we're gonna wing it and go with gut feeling. Okay, so I have mixed up this new yellow-orange color that I'm hoping will work. It's a mix between these two, and I don't know if you can see the colors here, but when you compare them, it looks like it should work. I'm gonna show you a close up here. So I have some level of confidence that it'll be between these two colors and hopefully more yellow-orange. The thing that's kind of challenging is that usually when I'm mixing colors, yellow always is less strong than other colors because it's so light colored, which is why I put so much yellow in here. So hopefully it'll work out. Honestly, I actually mixed way too much in this, so hopefully the color looks good because then I can use it for other things. So I guess it's time to stop putting this off and paint this little guy. All right, so I'm back in the studio today and the weather's a bit gloomy, so I apologize if it's a bit dark in here, but it's time to finally finish painting the jaguar today. Now, the jaguar has been fully dried and it wouldn't take an actual 24 hours for this to dry, but I just ended up going home yesterday. But what we'll be doing today is I'm painting on the second layer to make sure that any of these areas that I didn't paint very well are fully covered, and then we will also be painting the spots. So fingers crossed it goes well and that painting the spots isn't as challenging as I keep imagining it to be. So I don't always do this, but I am on a time crunch today, so I have to use the heat gun to make sure that I get this guy dried so that when I paint the spots on, there are no problems. The thing that becomes really challenging is that if I mess up the spots, it's going to be really, really hard to undo it. So I basically just can't mess up. Or if I mess up, just kind of embrace the mess ups. That's also another way to go. I'm gonna look at a photo to paint the face first, I think, which I don't know if it's a good idea or not to paint the face because I think that might be the hardest, but we're gonna start with that and then see how it goes. So one of the things I'm gonna test actually before I start painting is just seeing which brush is going to work the best. The brush I had used before was my watercolor brush, and I don't really want to use my watercolor brush with my ceramic paint. Granted, I am going to use this brush, which is for my underglaze, with my watercolor, so I think no matter what, it's going to be some cross-contamination. But I really want to get a brush that's going to give me the easiest time to paint these kind of round jaguar spots. So I don't think this is a good one right now. I think it's too flat. Let's see. Let me just move this up a little bit, and I apologize for the squeaky chair. My chair is very squeaky. Here, let's add this guy here so you can see him. The brush I actually have that's most similar to the brush that I had made these spots with is this gray brush. And I actually thought originally that this one wasn't going to work. I thought maybe it was going to be too thin, but I think this one's going to give me the most control. So I'm probably going to use this one. I'm definitely going to be using reference photos. I think the challenge is trying to get the spots to look very natural and not too uniform. So this is the one I just painted with my watercolor paint as a test with this brush, and I think this is going to work. I felt like I started off really strong, but then when I started painting the face, I felt like I messed up, and then I just kind of kept going with it. Honestly, there are a lot of places where I feel like I messed up, but I kind of just tried to embrace the more organic feel of the spots. And then also partway through when I was painting these spots along the body, I realized that they were shapes that I hadn't really practiced yet. So if you look at the way that a jaguar looks, the spots are kind of more square shaped actually on the body, and I didn't realize that. I feel like there are a lot of things that could have gone better. It was very, very hard to paint this piece actually because the bottom is so heavy. It made it really difficult for me to hold. Honestly, it turned out better than I thought it would, and I'm pretty happy with it. Actually, I will say that. I will actually say that I am happy with this. It was the hardest part of the whole thing, and I'm pretty happy with it. So now that I finally finished painting this piece, I have to put it into the kiln for the first firing. Typically the bisque firing is never really a problem. It's the final glaze firing, the one that happens after, where things can be either very, very magical and amazing or absolutely horrific. So we're gonna go ahead and put this into the kiln, and then we'll come back in 2 days to see how it looks and do the final glaze for it. So the state that it's in now is called the bisqueware state, which means that it has been fired once, but hasn't been fully fired to the final state. The next thing I need to do is I need to wash this little jaguar off before doing the glazing. And the reason I do that is to get all the dust off of it. You can't tell, of course, because you're not holding it, but there is a layer of dust that is on this that just comes from firing in the kiln. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and wash this off, and then I'm going to let it sit and dry fully before I do the glazing. I have this bucket of water here, and I'm gonna dip it. Ooh, can you see how good the color looks? So this is gonna be our very first glimpse of what the jaguar looks like. So I'm really pleased that the color actually turned out pretty spot on. I'm really proud of myself for being able to actually mix that. And now we just need to wait. So even though it looks dry at the naked eye, it's not fully dry. The clay is porous, so it's still holding some of the water from when I dipped it. We want this to be fully dry so that when I dip it in the glaze, it absorbs as much glaze as possible. So we're just gonna set this aside and wait. So it was actually the next day. I ended up just letting the piece just dry overnight because I had a lot of other things to do and I wasn't gonna be able to fill the kiln anyway. But now it's 24 hours later and it's finally time to glaze the jaguar.
So whenever I mix my glaze, I always use a drill with a mixer on the end. I just always find this to be a lot easier to mix the glaze. I've tried other techniques like using a, what's it called? Like a toilet scrub and like a whisk, but my glaze actually settles really, really thickly on the bottom, and this has just been the easiest way for me to make sure that everything is just thoroughly mixed all the way through. And I actually usually wax the bottom of my ceramics so I don't have to clean up as much off of the bottom, but I actually forgot to do that this time, so I had to take a wet sponge and just carefully remove as much of the glaze on the bottom as I could. It's really important to remove all of the glaze on the bottom because if any of it is sticking to the kiln when it's firing, it'll actually fuse with the kiln shelf itself and ruin both the piece and part of the kiln. This is also why the pieces in a glaze firing never touch. Otherwise, they would fuse together when the ceramic glaze melts. A glaze firing typically takes about 2 days to complete, so all we have to do now is wait.
Okay, it's finally the day to open the kiln, and I have been waiting actual months for this moment. I know for you it's only been, I don't know, like 20 or 30 minutes, but this has been a project that has been a long time in the making, and I'm so excited to finally see how it turns out. Now, fingers crossed everything went well, and let's go ahead and take a look. As always, safety first. Okay, are you ready for this? This is my very, very first planter for the Planters for My Plants series, and this is how she turned out. Oh my God. She's gorgeous. Oh wow, that yellow orange turned out so good. Can you see this? Sorry, it's so blurry. Look at her. Oh, and the glaze came out perfectly. It's so cute. Oh my gosh, I am so excited. Sorry, I'm just admiring the fact that she looks so good, and I can't wait to put my plant in it. My White Princess is gonna look so good in this, and it's actually been so long that I've had to repot that White Princess a few times now because I had to take out some of the extra pups and stuff like that. But before I end this video, we have to put the plant into the planter. So this is the moment of truth to see if this planter will actually fit in here. And honestly, I can't actually remember if this was even the one that I started out with in the video, because as I mentioned, I had to repot it. And looking at it right now, I'm not so confident it's gonna fit in there, but we're gonna see. So here we go. Ah, it just kind of fits. Okay, so the top of it's sticking out a little bit, but for the most part, it fits in there perfectly. And the planter itself is heavy enough so that it doesn't actually move at all because of this very, very top heavy bit. It looks like it got a little bit shorter than I expected. To be honest, I can't remember if it was this particular White Princess because I have multiple White Princesses, but this is the one I put in here just now, and it looks like it works. And if you remember, I designed it so that it would be very bottom heavy to help withstand the weight of a plank in it. And honestly, I think it works pretty well. And I can't actually see it. I know you can see it, but it looks very cute. I'm very happy with this. I'm so pleased. This project took me more than a month, I think almost 2 months to complete. And at the rate that I'm collecting plants and the rate that I'm making the planters, this is gonna be a long process, but I'm really, really excited to make the next one. And I'm just so happy with how this came out. So I'm really excited for the rest of the series. I know this is only the very first one, and it took me forever to make, but I do want to make a whole series for making planters for all my plants. And if you have an idea of which planter I should make next, let me know. I have a lot of philodendrons, and I know I originally said I wanted to make the planters match where the plants were from, but you know what, let's just leave it open. If you have any ideas for what kind of planter I should make next, let me know. So if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and give me a like, subscribe to the channel, and just let me know that you like this kind of content and I'm gonna be making more of it. And of course, leave a comment down below with what animal I should make next. So thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you in the next video.